I am 87 years old, and I want to tell you about the year I stopped explaining myself twice. Not the first time. I still say what I mean, plainly, the way my father said things across a kitchen table. I mean the second time. The piling of reasons on top of a word that was already finished. There were 9. 9 times I opened my mouth a second time and watched something simple turn into something long and sore. I wrote all 9 of them on the back of a seed envelope this spring, and when I set the pencil down, I did not feel ashamed, and I did not feel proud. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years. Pull your chair closer to the fire, friend, and sit with me a while. I am not telling you to go silent in your old age. I am not telling you that the people around your table stop deserving your words. That is not it. What I am telling you is smaller and stranger than that. After 75, a second explanation does not make you better understood. It makes you available. Do you know that feeling? You said one true thing, then spent the whole evening defending it, and by the time the dishes were dry, it was not yours anymore. My grandmother said a thing to me when I was 9 years old, and she said it with her back turned, standing at the stove. I had told her I did not want to go down to the river with the older boys. Then I told her again, with reasons. And the reasons turned into a case, and the case turned into her decision instead of mine, and I went to the river. She said, "The first time you speak, you are telling. The second time, you are asking." It took me 60 years to understand her. A word set down once lies in the field like a stone. A word picked up and held out a second time is a stone in your open hand, and whatever sits in your open hand can be taken by anyone who reaches. That is the whole teaching. The first confession is about driving at night. 2 autumns ago, I told my son one plain sentence. I do not drive after dark anymore. He nodded. It was finished. Then the quiet sat there, and it felt like disapproval to me. So I explained. I told him how the headlights bloom now, how the white line goes thin near the creek bridge. And my son loves me, so he answered my reasons the way a loving man answers. New glasses would help the bloom. I could take the long way and miss the bridge. That November, I drove home at 9 at night with my hands aching on the wheel because I had turned my sentence into a subject. He did not push me. That is what I want you to understand. He only answered what I handed him. And a loving man will always walk through a door you leave standing open. My grandfather used to say, "A fence explained is a fence with a gate in it." I say the one sentence now, and then I let the quiet be quiet. The quiet is not disapproval. The quiet is the sentence landing. Let me set one small thing down beside you before I go on. The Native Way is the little book where I keep these quiet lessons, and you will find the link in the description below this video. That link in the description will sit there just as quiet as I am, whether you ever touch it or not. The sayings my grandmother left me are written down in it, and the plain habits that made my last years lighter than my middle ones were. Some evenings a person wants the old words where a hand can hold them on a hard morning, and that is the whole of what it is for. An old man mentions it one time and then goes back to talking, which is exactly what I am about to do. Now, let me give you the second confession, because the second one taught me the true shape of this thing, and it involves a red truck and a coat hanger. The second confession is the truck. My nephew came out in June and asked for the loan of my old red truck to move his things to the city. I said, "The truck stays here." That was true, and it was finished. Then I explained it. I told him the transmission slips coming out of second gear. I told him the insurance is written only for me now. I told him my back needs that seat kept exactly where it is. Do you hear what I handed him? 3 reasons is 3 doors. He said he would drive around second gear. He said his brother-in-law writes insurance. He said he would mark the seat with tape. The truck went to the city and came back with the front bumper wired on with a coat hanger, and I was not angry at him. He only walked through the doors I built for him. My grandfather said, "Give a man your reasons, and you have handed him the rope to pull. Now the truck stays here." That is the entire speech. The third confession is about 8 o'clock. I go to bed at 8. My body decided that, not me. Last winter, at my granddaughter's supper, I stood up at 8 and said goodnight. That should have been the end of it. Instead, I explained, the heart pills, the way my eyes go grainy, how the morning comes at me early now. And my family, who love me, held a small meeting about my sleep right there over the pie. Somebody said I had napped in the afternoon, so surely. Somebody said stay for the photographs. I sat back down and I stayed until 11, and it took me until Wednesday to be a person again. My grandmother said, the body keeps its own hours, and it does not take a vote. Now I stand up at 8 and I say good night, this was a good evening. And I put my coat on while I am saying it, because a coat is an argument nobody can answer. The fourth confession is my wife's chair. Ruth has been gone 11 years. Her chair is still by the south window, and nobody sits in it, and that is simply how this room is arranged. A niece I love very much came in March and said gently that the chair might do some good at her daughter's place. I said, the chair stays, plain. Done. And then I explained my grief to her. I said something about the light at 4 o'clock and how the dust turns in it, and how I can still see the shape of Ruth's hands on those arms. Because I explained it, my sorrow came up onto the table to be examined. Was it healthy? Was it keeping me back? Was it time? I sat in my own kitchen defending my grief like a man at a hearing, and grief does not speak well under questioning. My grandmother said, do not call your sorrow into the room to testify. The chair stays. That is all it ever had to be. The fifth confession is the hall. For 19 years, I helped run the Tuesday meeting at the community hall. Chairs, coffee, the roof fund, the birthday list. 2 winters back, I told them I was finished. One sentence, said standing up, and it was honest. Then I explained. My knees on those stairs, the drive home in the dark, how the noise in that room comes at me all at once now, instead of one voice at a time. And every reason I gave, somebody solved. They moved the meeting downstairs. They found me a ride. They set a chair by the door. 2 more winters, I sat in a chair I had already stood up from. Here is the part that stings. I was not needed there. I was findable, which is not the same thing. My grandmother said, the one who gives reasons is still asking to be kept. I am finished. 3 words. I should have let them be lonely in the air. The 6th and the 7th confessions belong together, so let me set them side by side. The 6th is a plate of food. My sugar is not what it was, and at a family supper I said, this is plenty, thank you. Plain enough. But then I explained about the doctor, and the numbers, and the morning readings, and my whole family spent 20 minutes discussing my body across the table while I was sitting inside it. Now I say, this is plenty, thank you. And then I ask somebody about their roof. A question is a good door out of a room. The 7th is my barn. My grandson asked to store a few boxes. I said no. Then I said no with reasons. The damp and the mice and the loose board on the north side, and by August there were 11 boxes and a motorcycle in there, because he had dried the damp and set the traps and brought a board. My grandfather said, when you polish a stone in front of company, every hand in the room wants to hold it. The 8th confession is the one I am least proud of, and it is about a fence. My brother Gerald and I have shared a line of posts since our father split the ground between us. 6 years ago, that line drifted where the willows are. I walked over and told him once, standing in the wet grass. The line runs where the old stake is, and I am not moving it. That was a boundary. It was flat, it was true, and it did not need any help from me. But he went quiet, and I could not bear the quiet, so I explained. I brought up our father. I brought up the year he got the barn and I did not. I brought up 1974, which has nothing to do with willows. And a boundary that would have stood there by itself became an argument with a history inside it. And my brother and I did not speak for 3 years over a fence that never moved 1 inch. My grandmother said, "2 brothers need 1 word between them, not 2. We speak now. He is 84 and he walks the willows with me in the spring and neither of us says a word about the stake. But I lost 3 years of a man I only get 1 of, and I bought those 3 years with my own mouth. The 9th confession is the most important of all, and it happened right here at this table, 14 months ago. My daughter drove out to talk about a place in town. Assisted, they call it. She had the papers in a folder and her hands were shaking because she loves me and she was frightened for me. I said 1 sentence. I am staying in this house. That was plain. That was the whole of it. And then the old habit rose in me like water in a boot, and I explained. The garden. The light in the kitchen at 4 o'clock. The floorboard by the door that I know the sound of. Nobody can argue with a man's no. But anyone can argue with a garden. She said they have raised beds there. She said the rooms face south. She said, "Dad, they have a floorboard too, if that is what you want." And I sat there with a pen in my hand and the folder open. Then I heard my grandmother at the stove with her back turned. The first time you speak, you are telling. The second time, you are asking. I set the pen down, and I said it one last time, and never again. I am staying in this house. My daughter cried, and I let her cry, and I did not add a single word to make it easier on myself. Then she put the kettle on, and we sat, and nothing had to be won by anybody. My grandfather said, "A door you keep explaining is a door with a foot already in it." Now, writing those 9 down on that seed envelope was not the same as hating myself for them. I want you to hear that, because I know how an old man can take a list of his own faults and turn it into a verdict on his whole life. Explaining twice is something I did. It is not something I am. And I know where I learned it. I was raised to be useful. A useful man makes himself understood. A useful man does not leave people guessing, does not leave a room uneasy, does not let a silence sit there with a bad smell in it. For 50 years, my second sentence was how I proved I was still kind. That is not weakness. That is a good habit that outlived the season it was built for. Because here is what changed under me while I was not looking. When I was 40, my second sentence was information. People took it and went on with their day. Somewhere after 75, my second sentence stopped being information and started being a request for permission. Not because I changed the words, because the room changed around me. They started watching me for cracks. They started loving me the way you love someone you are afraid of losing, which is a fierce love and a managing love. So a man my age has to learn a new arithmetic. 1 sentence is a boundary. 2 sentences is a negotiation. 3 is a hearing, and at a hearing, somebody always loses. I am not ashamed of the 9. A man who never explained twice would be a man who never cared what his people thought of him. And I would not want to be that. And I do not think you would either. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl before she stepped out into the wind. 9. The driving after dark, the red truck, 8 o'clock at the supper table, Ruth's chair by the south window, the Tuesday haul, the plate of food, the barn full of boxes, my brother and the willow fence, and this house, which is still mine. Now let me turn it around and hand it to you. When you tell your family what you will and will not do, does it end with the telling? Or do you go and fetch your reasons like a dog fetching a stick, hoping somebody will finally say, "Yes, that is fair, you are allowed"? Do you defend your sleep? Do you defend your grief? Do you explain your no until it softens into a maybe? just to keep a face across from you from falling? And who taught you that a plain word was rude? And how long ago was that? And are they even still living? And when the quiet comes after you have spoken, what do you do with it? Do you let it be, or do you fill it? Because the filling is the whole thing. The filling is where 60 years of my good manners went, and I would like you to keep more of yours than I kept of mine. I know there is one of you sitting out there tonight with your hand over your mouth thinking, is it too late for me? I have explained myself twice for 50 years. He is telling me this at 82, at 78, and the habit is set in me like a nail in an old board. Listen to me. 87 has taken a great deal from me. My knees, my brother's 3 years, the sound of Ruth in the next room. It has not taken the ability to hear a second sentence starting up in my throat and to let it stay there unsaid. That much is still mine every single morning, and it is still yours. You do not have to mend 50 years tonight. One noticing, one ordinary choice at one ordinary table. That is all I am claiming, and it is enough. I would like to hear from you now. Of those 9, which number sat closest to your own kitchen table? Was it the chair, or the fence, or the one about 8 o'clock? Tell me down in the comments, just the number if that is all you have in you tonight. I read every one of them, slowly, with my coffee going cold beside me. And then come back and sit with me again tomorrow. The fire will be going, the chair by the window will be empty, and I will keep a place for you.